Welcome to Assistive Technology to Support Reading. This is session 2 in a 4-part series. This session will be on locating accessible materials. I'm Corinne Hauer, Assistive Technology Consultant for the MAISD.
And I'm Jim Capilla.
So just again, an overview of our series. We're offering 4 30 to 45-minute webinars. These will be recorded and posted on our PD website, and that will look at assistive technology to support students who struggle with reading. Our first session was on assessment and documentation of need. That video is posted on our PD website, and the viewing of that prior to the subsequent sessions is strongly encouraged. Today's session will be on locating electronic material, so we'll look at some different resources for that. And following sessions will include tools to be able to access that material. That will be posted on our PD website on October 27th, and followed by online tools to support comprehension. So in our first session, we talked about the who might benefit from these types of supports, and looked at how to determine student need and how to document that. And we also started to talk a little bit about why students might need these type of supports and how they might benefit. So just to reiterate a couple of those things, these tools are designed to build independence in students who struggle with reading across the curriculum. So we want to fade that adult reader support. So for students who need to rely on adults or others in their building, in their homes, to help read material to them, we want to fade that support and build independence for those students. Also, it's about giving students access to things that they want to read when they want to read them. So it's about giving them access to things that are engaging for them to read and build a love of reading, and help them build knowledge in things in areas of interest to them that might be above their independent reading level. There's a blog post there if you have time at a later date to take a peek at that. I encourage you to do that. So, and we're looking at accessible reading. So we're going to be talking today about how to make some reading more accessible to our students. That can be a variety of forms, including reading with an adult. It can be listening only to text. So this might be like listening to an audiobook in your car when you're driving, or on a plane when you're flying. It could be listening with the book in front of you, as we might see students do with an MP3 player with a paperback novel in front of them, but listening to that book read and hopefully following along in the book. It could be listening on an electronic book. So a PDF might be a version of this, so that has a built-in reader with it. They could pull up a book or a document in a PDF format and just to listen and have that read to them without highlighting. And then we'll also be looking at some tools that will offer listening to text that's highlighted either line by line or word by word, using some assistive technology tools that would be available. So in the next few slides, we're going to take a look at each of those types of reading. We have some short video clips to give examples of that and talk about the advantages and disadvantages of each of those types of reading supports.
Chapter 1. The Boy Who Lived. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal, thank you very much.
So in this example of an adult reader reading to a student, this is a fairly common support, especially for students as they're younger. And the advantages to this type of support is that it provides students the opportunity to listen to a fluent reader. And also has we have the opportunity to provide comprehension supports. The adult stopping to ask questions, to clarify any vocabulary, those types of things. So all advantages of an adult reader. The disadvantage, of course, is the student dependence on the adult reader, and this disadvantage begins to outweigh the advantages, of course, as the student becomes older.
They were the last people you'd expect.
In this next example, we'll be looking at an example of just listening without the text.
Chapter 1.
Did you see her? That was the first thing Kevin said to me on the first day of school, 11th grade. We were waiting for the bell to ring.
So that example shows, again, listening to an audiobook, whether it be on a CD, whether it be on an MP3 file on a phone. So the advantages of that would be that it's portable. It doesn't stand out, so a student can be listening to it on the bus, they could be listening to it in class, they could be listening to it at home or out hanging out with friends. You do have some options for human recorded books, again, being able to listen to that adult fluent reader voice. Disadvantages is, of course, the text isn't in front of the student, so there's nothing to promote following along on the page, and there aren't any options for comprehension support with this type of reading support.
In this next example, we're going to, and this was actually a support that was very popular in the early part of the century before tablets. We had MP3 players and we had MP3 files, and students would sit and listen to those and follow along in a book. So here's an example.
The
And this happens to
Adventures
be
of
Audacity.
Huckleberry
It
Finn,
wasn't the book.
Tom Sawyer's Comrade, by Mark Twain. Notice.
I think you get the idea.
Persons
The
attempting
advantages
to
of
find a motive in this narrative
I
will
think
be
it's still playing.
prosecuted.
Let's try that again. There we go. The advantages of the MP3 player is it's very portable. It doesn't stand out. Kids don't look different when they're listening to something. They might still be listening to Al Hurt or somebody like that. The options were very great at the time for human recorded speech. Right now we would still use something like this. It might use synthesized speech. The disadvantages would be that the students may not be following along in the book and they may daydream, and there are no options for comprehension support, but it still is a viable alternative. So let's move on. In this next example, I'm going to show you an electronic book. This is actually a PDF, and this feature is built into Acrobat Reader and Acrobat Professional as well. There's no extra software that needs to happen. So let's take a look. I'm setting it up, and here we go.
Horses come to America. Explorers brought horses to America. The first horses came from Spain. After Columbus discovered America, he sailed back to Spain.
I know you wanted to hear all of that. Disadvantages of this, it would be hard for a student to be able to follow along. It's less portable because it really does require a device, which probably would be a Windows tablet possibly, or some type of a Mac tablet, which I don't think there are even those. And so you'd need a computer, so not very portable, but it is a feature that has been built into Acrobat for some time, and it is a reasonably good support.
So in the next few examples that we're going to show, we're going to look at some different supports that offer highlighting of the text along with the text being read. Some of these supports will highlight line by line, and some will highlight word by word, and some will highlight the word and the line. So the advantages to these supports are pretty much all the same. They promote following along on the page. They also offer options to support comprehension because this text would be read on a device that would offer some dictionary support. Also, the student could go back and have a portion of the text reread, unlike support that would just continue to read on. So they could go back and choose a selection and have that selection reread. The disadvantage is, of course, it requires a device with a specific app or extension that supports this feature. In our next webinar, we'll be looking more closely at those types of apps or extensions and the features that are supportive in those. This first example is an example of some text being read. It's actually a book from Bookshare being read on a Go Read app, which is an Android app, and this was, I believe, on a Nook, which runs an Android system.
Eyes flashing with excitement as he translated into articulate language the speech of the horns and sirens. That's a steam siren going in over there to the left, and you hear that fellow with the frog in his throat, a steam schooner as near as I can judge, crawling in from the heads again.
So hopefully you noticed in that video that that text was read line by line, so it helped draw the student's eye to the line that was being read at the time. It does not highlight word by word, so it relies on the student to follow along on that line once they locate it. These next examples are examples of two Chrome extensions that will highlight word by word. The first one will be, I believe, Snap and Read.
Snap and Read.
A Snap and Read extension, Chrome extension.
Prof. Angus Deaton, a British economist, was awarded the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Science on Monday for improving the accuracy of basic economic gauges, including measures of income, poverty, and
So Snap and Read is a tool that we do subscribe to a number of licenses to, and we'll learn more about that in our next recorded webinar session. Read and Write for Google is another option, and this is a free option. If you wanted to explore it in the Chrome Web Store, there will be a link at the end of this presentation.
M.R. Colley founded a non-profit 12 years ago to create the series. It was produced in 2 smaller spaces before moving last year into a studio inside the old Family Dollar store, where an inaugural episode was shot in early summer. It's basically a big Star Trek.
So now you have a little better idea of the different types of reading supports that would be available, the features that those offer, and advantages and disadvantages to each of those. And now Jim is going to talk a little bit about where you can locate some electronic reading material to use those supports with.
Just keep in mind that everything that we just showed you is a better support than a student not being able to read and comprehend. Anyway, so moving on. For a number of years, we here at the ISD have created a number of resources for student use, and you get to it from our academic services page, and we've got a number of download forms for PDF novels, PDF textbooks, MP3 format books, and then of course PowerPoint books, which probably won't suit your needs. But if you need an MP3 book to fit on a player, or it will run on a tablet, we have a form that you should download, and if I can get my scroll to work here, there we go. Everything's in alphabetical order. It's a matter of going and checking which one you want. You fill the form out and save it, and say right here, send it to me. There's my email address. This form is the same for all of the other categories of the books. We're finding that possibly as we get more people interested into Bookshare, that this may not be of value. However, it's still here, and we have a number of human recorded books on this in this area. Going back to our section, we've got a couple other LibriVox and free classic audio books. Those offer books that are human read. They're typically books that are out of copyright, and you can listen online. You can read pretty nice stuff if you have kids that are perhaps reading that really old stuff that we read in the last century for English class, but nicely done by professional readers. Project Gutenberg is probably the oldest system for creating and saving books online. They're available in MP3, they're available in text format, and you can find, again, probably similar books that you would have found on LibriVox, but Project Gutenberg is one that we have relied on well before the time of Bookshare, and can be an excellent support for your students. It's accessible by everyone, and it is free. Let's move on to the next page. And so we saw books. Now this is where we can look at resource materials. One of my favorites, the Michigan Electronic Library, has been in existence for about 15 years. It's paid for with your tax dollars if you are a tax-paying citizen in Michigan. We've got a number of great databases that could be good. Britannica School, elementary, middle, and high school, they all have their own sections. So each one of these is a commercially made database. And I have a document as a resource that explains the accessibility features. But for a clean resource put together by librarians that you can actually trust a kid to go through, I think there's about 40 databases, some of them not particularly important. The ERIC search might work better for teachers. We've got an encyclopedia that I think would really be an excellent thing for ESL students because it's a Spanish encyclopedia and can be quite useful. And of course we have bookshare.org, and we've got a number of supports with Bookshare. This is our go-to site now to find books. You can notice now they have over 367,000 titles, including novels of importance for schools, magazines, newspapers. Great feature for students that qualify. They can use this for free. These titles can be read on computer, they can be read online, they can be read on any tablet. A really nice resource. They're all read in a synthesized voice, but the quality is quite good, and it does take students a bit to get used to them, maybe a book or so, but we've had great success with the students who are using it. They like that opportunity. Down here, the accessible text resource, this actually will take you to a document that explains sources. As we scroll through it, tagging on to the end of it, here are all the accessibility features built into those the school-related functions on MEL, and so you can take a look at that, and it will hyperlink to all of those databases, so that'll make it navigation nice and easy. And so there we have that. So we're nearing the end of our webinar here. And what we're recommending is you want to review the process for getting Bookshare materials. I have a video explaining this, but still pay attention. This takes us out to the Bookshare website. You need to start right here. Sign up today. Pretty easy. Once you do that and sign up as an organization, which could be your school, whoever is the lucky first person to sign up becomes the primary contact. That's also changeable if necessary. And we can then sign up teachers, they're called sponsors, and then our members are the students. And once we do that process, we can then provide them access in a variety of ways on a variety of pieces of equipment to start reading the books they want to read and the books they have to read. And of course, if you're curious about, well, I forgot about how to, who's eligible. Our first webinar located here or linked here will explain that process. You will want to look at some of the additional text resources found in this document, especially MEL. If you're not used to it, you might want to review that accessible text resource guide document to give you a little bit of hints in terms of what might work for you. It's really a great resource, and it's one that's underutilized and paid for with your tax dollars. So what you'll want to do in addition to those steps is look at your environment in the school. What equipment might these documents and electronic text be used on? Do you have a computer? Do you have Chromebooks? Do you have tablets? And in our next webinar, we will be looking at how those all can be brought into play to help the students with those reading difficulties and make you a better teacher.
So as we wrap up our session for today, just a few reminders and resources for you. We do have optional face-to-face follow-up times that will be offered here at the MAISD in our Lighthouse lab, computer lab. There's a registration link there. Please register because we'll provide dinner for you if you'd like to come. Those are after school, and you can download the flyer with the exact times for those. on that registration link. Some things that would be some options for our time together during those face-to-face sessions would be to review the PAR, which is protocol for accommodations in reading. That was from our first webinar, and plan for how you're going to assess your students in terms of identifying students who might benefit from supports in reading. Continue learning about free text readers to complete the PAR process, or to get text in an accessible format for students. Learn about options for getting passages in an accessible format to complete the PAR process. So if you have a reading assessment you are familiar with and want to use, we can help you get those passages in an electronic format to be able to complete the assessment process with a tool you're familiar with, as well as reviewing options and processes for securing accessible text. So once you've identified students who can benefit from these supports, now again, okay, how do I sign up for Bookshare? I think I have my organizational account. How do I add sponsors? How do I add students? Once I've added students, how do I identify and download the materials the students want and need to read? And how do I get them on my equipment that I have available, whether that's a computer, whether that's a Chromebook, a tablet, a student's personal device, and we can help you with those types of things. So if you need some one-on-one face-to-face support, please join us December 1st for that. We also have a link to handouts and resources from today, so some of the things that were referenced in some of the on the slides from today's presentation, that this link will take you right to a folder where you have the slide deck from our presentation, as well as additional documents and a recording of today's presentation, so that link to today's webinar will be there. And we also mentioned earlier in the presentation, if you're ready to move to the next step, you've identified your students who are going to be using the materials, you've identified some resources to get those materials, and now you're ready to start using them. We have a couple of links to some Chrome extensions, because it's a fairly universal platform available on computers or Chromebooks, at least, that students might have access to. So Speak It and Read and Write for Google are two free, readily available text readers, and you can click on those links. It will take you right to the Chrome web store, where you can enable those extensions and begin using them with students. If you have questions about today's session, about previous sessions or upcoming sessions, or want help faster, you could always contact us. Our email addresses are there for you. Thank you for joining us today.
Have a wonderful day.
And we hope to see you at our next webinars.